Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome everybody. Let me call this meeting to order. This is our Provo Municipal Council meeting. It is Tuesday, November 15th. It's 5:36 p.m. In 2022. Meetings of the Municipal Council are being held in hybrid fashion. Members of the public can view council meetings on YouTube or Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber at the Provo City Center. I will remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up and recorded. My name is George Handley. I'm the council chair. I'm joined on the stand by Councilor McKay, Catrice McKay, who's vice chair, and Rachel Whipple, Councilor Dave Shipley, and Travis Hoban, who will be joining us shortly. Councilors Shannon Ellsworth and Bill Fillmore are excused this evening, and we're joined on the stand by Wayne Parker, Chief Administrative Officer Brian Jones, our city attorney, and Justin Harrison, our executive director. The opening prayer will be provided by Scott Farron, after which Boy Scout Troop 730. We're very grateful to have you here. They will be conducting a flag ceremony and leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we thank thee for civic-minded people like those who will attend this meeting and those who run for the council. Thank thee for the rule of law. Thank thee for police officers like those here who will put themselves in harm's way to keep us safe. Thank thee for the Constitution that gives us rights. We ask that this work will be virtuous and good and uplifting to all involved as much as possible with diverging viewpoints. We thank thee again for the United States of America and those who've protected it, especially as we've recently celebrated Veterans Day, those who've given their all. And we ask for blessings on it and on this city council and on this city in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you.
Color guard attention, audience attention. May the audience please rise. Color guard, forward march. Salute. Color guard, please post the colors of the United States of America. Please post the colors of the state flag. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2. Color guard reassemble. Color guard dismissed. The audience may be seated.
Thank you to you guys for coming tonight. And I understand you're going to stay for a little bit of the meeting. We're grateful that you're here, grateful that you're interested in serving your community. And we hope that tonight is a good experience for you. But thank you for bringing that ceremony to us tonight. That was lovely. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided by those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to the item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. So again, if there's anybody here in the audience that would like to speak to anything that's not on the agenda, now is your time. All right, seeing none, any online either, so we'll begin with item number 1, which is a resolution consenting to the appointment of an individual to the Landmarks Commission. Mayor Kafusi is presenting this item.
Chair Hanley and members of the Municipal Council, I am recommending the following appointment to Provo City Boards and Commission as indicated below, and submit this here with the council's advice and consent. This is for the Landmarks Commission. It's Marcy Lamonier. Marcy's educational background is in history and included a class in public history, which focuses on preserving landscapes, cityscapes, neighborhoods, and buildings. Marcy has served on the Provo Police Department Advisory Board in the past and would be a great asset. I am recommending Marcy be appointed to a 4-year term on the Landmarks Commission as an alternate ending June 30th, 2026. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll thank you, Mayor, for that presentation, and I will call for a vote. And I will begin with myself. I will vote yes. Councillor Hoban. Oh, he's not here. Councillor Hoban is excused. Councillor McKay.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
So that is 4 in favor with 3 excused. All right, we'll begin, turn to item number 2. An implied motion on an ordinance amending the previously adopted ordinance 2022-23 regarding the neighborhood program. Justin Harrison, our executive director, will present.
Good evening, council. Just a little brief history for those in the audience or who weren't with us during the work meeting. The council adopted changes to the previous neighborhood program and adopted the new neighborhood district program ordinance on August 9th, 2022. Subsequently, the neighborhood program review committee has recommended some cleanup language that consists of 3 small changes to Appendix A, which you see on the screen before you. They include the first change on line 168. So this is section 040 sub 4B2, which makes changes to the terms of office for the executive board chair. The previous version that was adopted allowed for or required that a 24-month period be taken before a chair could be reelected or take the position again of a neighborhood district board chair. The change has been made or is proposed to be 12 months, so that there would just be a 1-year gap that someone would need to step down as chair before they could serve as chair again. The second amendment comes in section 050 sub 4 relating to language in the previous version of the ordinance pertaining to Utah Open, the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. As this body doesn't actually fit the definition of governing boards that this section of Utah code applies to. The decision was made to strike this language within the Neighborhood Program Review Committee. The intent there, as noted, is that as these meetings are noticed, they'll be posted on the city website, and that additional steps will be laid out in the Neighborhood District Program Procedures Handbook that will be available for the public. So the intent being that the city and the intent of the council is to make this widely available to the public, even though they do not fall under the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act. And lastly, one change, a typo from the previous ordinance. This is on line 279, subsection 060 sub 5, just changing the word it to if. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? None. I'll ask if there's any comment from the public on this item. Harrison. Okay, no public comment. Then I'll bring it back for council discussion. Any discussion of this item? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Hoban,
Yes.
Councilor McKay, Councilor Shipley,
Yes.
Councilor Whipple,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Did you hear Councilor McKay vote yes? Okay. Okay, so that was 5 in favor with Councilors Fillmore and Ellsworth excused. Councilor Hoban has joined us. All right, we'll turn to item number 3, an ordinance amending Provo City Code regarding towing operations to clarify signage requirements and allowed fees. Brian Jones, our city attorney.
Thank you, Chair Handley. We discussed this during the work session. Basically, this is just a cleanup ordinance. There was a presentation given a month ago in front of the council that talked about signage requirements and the requirements in city code and state code for when vehicles can be towed, and also some questions about clarifying what fees can be charged. So this is a cleanup ordinance that just follows the recommendations from that meeting to remove some of the signage requirements that were duplicative and to clarify some of the fee language. There was also a discussion in the work session today about grace periods and adding that in, and the council's been so efficient since then that I have not added that language to this ordinance. So this is just the cleanup ordinance that we talked about in the work session at this point.
All right,
can I
thank
answer any
you.
questions?
Any questions for Mr. Jones? Glad you got in the word duplicative. That's a good word. Any comment from the public on this item? Okay, seeing no comments from the public, we'll bring it back to any discussion from the council. Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on this item. Councilor McKay,
Yes.
Councilor Shipley,
Yes.
Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
I, George Handley, will vote yes. Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
That vote is unanimous, 5 in favor with Councilors Ellsworth and Fillmore excused. Turn to item number 4. Okay, there we go. This is an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code to enact Chapter 3.15% for the Arts Public Art Program. Malia Daly.
Okay, so this is just the presentation from the work meeting from our last council meeting. I'm just going to go over it briefly, just for the public, if they weren't watching that work session. And then I'll go over some changes that we made from direction from the council. So this is a public art program, and the goal is to have a greater integration of art into public spaces throughout the city. And these are the different ordinance sections. So we have the purpose, the definitions, the creation of the program. Sections 3, 4, and 5 talk about kind of more procedural aspects of the program. And then title of art, maintenance, security, rights of the artist. So going over each of those sections, in the definition section, we worked hard to make sure that the definition of art was broad enough to make sure that we can cater to all types of art and different artistic kind of visions and forms of art. And then we also defined the different city buildings and facilities and what that means and what is eligible for the percent for the arts appropriation. The actual section 3 is on the creation of the program, specifically the collection and the use of funds. So the funds are administered and kind of directed by the Provo Arts Council, and this is held within the Parks and Rec Department budget under the Covey Center division in a separate function within that division. And how funds are collected is 1% of the original planned construction budget for a building or facility as defined in that first section, that the Art Council determines as sufficient public use or access will be directed towards the percent for the art program budget. And as we noted in the work session, this doesn't include parts of the budget that are funded through grants or other specific or restricted funding sources, in as much that doing so would violate the terms of those funding sources. So this is actually the section where we made a change about the 1% exemption, which I will get to after we go through all these sections first. This is an example that we went over just to kind of detail out how this would work. So like on that top one, if you have a total capital budget of the project, and the capital and budget includes both the construction, but then also engineering fees, design fees, kind of like management fees. And so we're excluding those from the percent for the arts eligible pot of money and just focusing on the construction budget. And then we would subtract from the amount that we're taking the 1% from the restricted funding. And so in this project is $650,000. And then, so the eligible budget we're pulling the 1% from would end up being 1.35. And so then the 1% would be 13,500. And that would go into the percent for the arts kind of pot of money. And then if that project lends itself to art, the design of the project and it being in a public space, we'll try to include art within the project that the money is being pulled from. But also, if not all the money is used for that, or if the project, the principal users of the project or the Arts Council deems that the money should go to a different art project, that is their jurisdiction and up to their discretion. Selection and placement of art. This is just kind of about how they're going to solicit submissions for art and different artists. And this is where in the middle section, that second bullet point, since the Arts Council is an administrative body, they're going to create their own rules, procedures, and guidelines as they see necessary to make sure that art proposals are being screened well, they're fair, they're transparent, and then also make sure that there's good installation, maintenance, accessibility. They're coordinating with communities and neighborhoods to make sure that art is being displaced in all parts of Provo and that everyone can enjoy it. And then program guidelines. These are really broad guidelines because, again, this is being administered by the Arts Council and not through the Municipal Council. So these are, as you can see, like that second bullet point, this is, making sure art is throughout the city. This is also giving preference first to Provo artists, but they can have artists from anywhere submit and consider their works of art. There is a clause here. We had a brief discussion in the work meeting about what if someone submits art that some might not be of the best values of Provo or reflect the community values of Provo. And so there actually is a clause in there directing the Arts Council on that. And we also discussed about the final appropriation for the art acquisition and placement is at the discretion of the Municipal Council, as we are the appropriating body over funds. And the last three, these are about the title of art, maintenance and security, and the rights of the artists whose art is used in the city. So now we are going to go to the new language, which Elizabeth will help us find on base. Do you want me to? I'll pull it up. Sorry, everyone, trying to present and run it at the same time, but we'll pull it up. But the language was published, and but we can find that while you take public comment if you have any, and then we can pull that up. But it's just about the exemption clause, where there's a clause in there. I think the original clause is on the slides. Oh, they're clicked out of something else. But it's just about that. A program can be exempted from the 1% if they have art built into the design of the project. And there was concern that if they are granted that exemption by the Arts Council for contributing to the public art fund, then what if, budget becomes tight and they want to cut art first or those artistic elements to save money? And in that case, Brian and I worked on some language, and they would, their budget would have to be reviewed by the Arts Council, and they would be held responsible for then contributing the original 1% into the art fund, or they would work with the Arts Council to come up something that was equivalent to it. So there you go. It's B subsection 2 and then A. So during such review, the Arts Council may rescind the exemption or offset, otherwise determine how the 1% contribution or its equivalent shall be met by the project. So that we added that in there to make sure there wasn't projects when they got tight on budgets, as they almost always do, arts isn't left out. Thank you.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Is there any questions for? Oh, okay. Thank you, Bailey. And we'll open this up for any public comment. Like to come forward? State your name and your residence.
Quinn Peterson, Provo. This is 2 minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm really excited about this. I think it's going to help support a lot of things. We've had many opportunities for public art in the past that we have not been able to capitalize on because we didn't have the funds for the opportunity, and the window has passed. One concern I just wanted to address is the opportunity for a project to use the 1% if they have artistic elements in their proposal. I think that's a way that kind of obfuscates the responsibility for the funds. And I think that it's come to a good compromise, better than it had been. My only fear would be we're taking a lot of subjectivity into what these are. And for different departments, whether it's a sewer line upgrade and they think, fancy brick counts, I hope that there's responsibility and accountability for things like that. I think that there's a lot of strength in a separate group that are deemed artists or an arts council or a public art body to be the ones that are administering these funds rather than different departments that are spending the money throughout the community.
Thank you. Please.
Thorbjorn, residence Provo. Ladies and gentlemen of the Municipal Council, regarding section 7 of the proposed slides, I would like to ask that the council appropriately discuss that the artist should also be responsible for the maintenance of the art, not just the art council or the users of the building. Because I do believe that if someone is going to make the art and has the permissions, they should have to maintain their art and keep it safe, because I don't think it would be fair for an artist to, in a theoretical situation, just get the permissions for the art and just leave the maintenance to the Arts Council and the users of the building. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to make a comment? Please come forward. Go ahead. Oh, is that, okay, I thought that was a hand up. That was a high five. Okay. All right. No comments from the online, so we'll bring it back to the council. Yeah. Let's bring it back to the council for discussion. Any discussion of this item? Mr. Shipley.
Appreciate the comments and appreciate all the work that Malia and others have done on this code. I mean, we're trying to mimic state code on this. Actually, the state has had a % for the arts program for years and years, and we feel like it's a good at least place to start with this ordinance, and trying to free up some funds, some new funds, for artistic elements in Provo, but also preserve artistic elements. Many times when a project will happen, to Ms. Daly's point earlier, many times it's budgeted for in a new project, but then because of overages with every single project that we complete, art tends to be the first thing that gets cut. So we end up with square buildings and no artistic elements sometimes with government related buildings. So we're hoping to improve that. To the comments that were made, I think it's a good and valid point that if only to directors, discretion, anything could be an artistic element, and perhaps exclude or abdicate an opportunity for an artistic, a real artistic element to be had. The challenge, I guess, that we had crafting the ordinance is that we want it to be broad enough, that something that somebody considers artistic could be considered artistic, regardless of what that is. If the Arts Council and their oversight and their work with, the departments doesn't, if we feel like directors are excusing, anything as artistic element to get outside of this, I think that's something we could look at again and try to shore that up, because it's not our intent to have that happen. We want real things that the average person could appreciate as an artistic element, within the city happening. And I'm excited for that as an opportunity. To the other point that was made, I remember his first name, Thor, because it's so cool. Thor Muir. To have the artist responsible for the art, I appreciate that comment. I think some artists will want to be involved in the care of their own art if they have specific care that they would like to do. We didn't want to put that responsibility all on the artist. If there's something that a department can do to help care for that art, we want a department or a building or a maintenance, maintenance that we've already employed, to help with that. For example, if there was a piece of art in this building, I hope that we would do a great job caring for that piece of art as part of the building maintenance. So I appreciate that concern, and thank you for coming and participating and voicing that. We'll make sure and consider that too as we go along. Anyway, I'm really excited about this. This is something we've worked on for about a year now. We were excited about it last year. I hope to see some really fun, unique artistic elements happening in Provo. I think it's one of the reasons that people visit city centers and towns across America when they travel places. I think artistic elements really are a driver. I think it'll be a great economic opportunity actually for the city of Provo if we do a good job with this and administer it in a good way. So thank you.
Councilor Whipple.
Thank you. I was also on the committee that worked on this, and I did want to address our public comments. So first, on the rights of the artist, one of those is that the artist has the right of first refusal to conduct repair and conservation work. That means that if it needs to be repaired, we ask the artist first to come and do that work. It's kind of a technical term. That way they could fix it the way that they feel like it should be fixed. But also, if they have moved and they're gone, or they're out of the country, or they have passed away, then there's still a process that somebody else could do the repair work. We actually ran into issues like that with one of the murals that we had in the Maeser Park. There had been a great mural that was put up, but it was really degraded, and it was really hard to find the artist to try to do the repair work so that we could fix it after it had been water damaged significantly. So we did think about that, and we're working on that. One thing I wanted to say about artistic elements of the building, an example of that would be the rebuild of Fair School into Provo Peaks, where they took the old kind of Art Deco tiles that were on the old building and they cast new ones so that they could put that on this brand new building. So I would consider that actually an artistic element that's part of the building and adds to the character. And so that's the kind of thing that we really wanted to include, because it added cost to that project in order to do that just purely decorative element, but it made it fit in the neighborhood better, and it increases the social value of that building. So that's part of the reason that we have that in there. And of course, this is subject to approval of the Arts Council. If they decide that the thing that's being pitched to them doesn't really qualify as an artistic element, then that's not an offset that they get. But thank you all for coming and participating. And we're really, really excited about this going forward.
Well, I'll say I'm grateful to the committee for bringing this proposal forward. I'm very supportive and passionate about this, and I think it's a great thing. So I look forward to the fruit it will bear in our city. I also assume that a lot of artists aren't necessarily going to be sticking around, drop off create their work of art. I mean, right? They could be gone over time. So it's good to have sort of a mix of perspective or responsibilities and accountability for it.
To that, Mr. Hanley, there is part of the budget allocated to the maintenance of the art as well. So it's not just a new expense to different department heads or a new expense to the artists. There's some budget for that.
All right, if there's no further discussion for this item, then I will call for a vote on this item. I'll begin with Counselor Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
I, George Hanley, will vote yes. Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
That is unanimous, 5 in favor and 2 counselors Ellsworth and Fillmore excused. Turn to item number 5. This is an ordinance, an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code to update references to local development standards, presented by David Day, Assistant City Engineer.
Just by introduction to this item, we do this every year, and I hope you don't get bored with it, but we have a lot of fun in Public Works talking about all these issues. And so it's been hours and hours getting to this point, deciding on and or 5, 4, so anyway, kind of nerdy stuff, right? The actual ordinance is in front of you right there. The change is just to change the number from 2022 to 2023 on the standard drawings and the standard for our development. So out of all of those manuals you see in front of you, the 5,000 pages and pictures and all of that, we are proposing changing 15 of those pages in the standard drawings, and of those 15, 6 are being removed, and also in the design standards, 5 pages are being edited. So what we do is over the course of the year, we take feedback from everyone who uses these standards, and we try to make them a living, breathing document so that they're always adjusting to the most current standard and best practice. So these are the copies of the documents that you've already seen. And so I just asked if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Day. Any questions? It doesn't appear there are any, so I'll call for any comment from the public on this item. All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for any discussion. This item was heard at the Planning Commission on November 9th. This is the first hearing, so does any council member desire to consider this item again at a next council meeting? Seeing none, then I will call for a vote on the implied motion. I will begin with Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
I, George Hanley, will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay. Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
That is unanimous, 5 in favor with Councillors Ellsworth and Fillmore excused. Turn to item number 6, an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 0.21 acres of real property generally located at 515 South, 700 East from residential conservation to low density residential. The Maeser Neighborhood, and Bill Pepperoni, our Development Services Director, will present it.
Thank you, Chair Hanley. The applicant purchased the subject property. Go to the next slide. In February or March 2020, soon after buying the property, she came into the Development Services Department and asked about subdividing it into 2 6,000 square foot lots to build homes for 2 of her children. Based on her closing documents and the county records, it looked like she had bought 0.29 acres, which would have been enough for 2 6,000 square foot lots. As we talked about it over the front counter, I became suspicious of what actually was purchased. And so I encouraged the applicant to go back and talk to the title company, hire a surveyor if that was necessary, to check the records carefully. And after spending many months doing that, she discovered that she actually only purchased 0.21 acres, which is now not enough for 6,000 square foot lots. The applicant and I had many meetings over many months talking about different possibilities and different scenarios. And the path of least resistance was to just go ahead and build a single family home with a detached accessory unit, which are permitted in the RC zone. But that is not what she really wanted. It wasn't what she wanted from the beginning. So although those units are under construction, building permits been issued, what Mrs. Riley would really like to do is have 2 single family homes. And so that's the impetus for the LDR zoning. Some significant factors that the Planning Commission considered was that this entire block is in the neighborhood master plan as multifamily residential. There's multifamily residential to the north. Those are townhomes to the north, and then stacked apartments behind those. And to the west are townhomes that are higher density than 12 units to the acre. And that's why there's an MDR zoning there. So based on her proposed use being less than multifamily, being less dense than that, based on the surrounding uses and the neighborhood plan, the Planning Commission felt comfortable recommending approval on this. That's a very brief explanation of what's going on. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Ms. Riley is here to answer any questions that you have. In fact, I think she would like to talk to you if given that opportunity.
She can come forward now if she'd like. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been a very long emotional experience for me. I apologize for the tears, but I can't do this without going there because this project started as a result of trying to find something to do with funds from the loss of my husband, who was killed in a plane crash, to try and help my kids spearhead a start to their lives as a gift from their dad. So I apologize, but talking about it always brings it up. That was the purpose for searching for a lot that could be subdivided for two so that they could each take something with them through all the discovery that came after the fact, which in the disclosure documents, nothing was ever stated about any issues or any documents that brought any of it into question, including the county on the site plan, the county records document. It showed the 0.29 acres on the previous owner's name, and it even showed my 0.29 acres after I closed. So the errors and the issues with this lot go way before me, and all of this has been done to try and put an end to a long history of problems that were discovered as part of this lot. The request to split them is simply, I'm building them and they're underway so they can each have something, but they can't take something with them independently without the split. When we looked at the surrounding areas and even what the long-term plan is for this particular lot, it technically could be taken, pulled into other pieces and have a lot more put on it than what we're putting on it. But we're just hoping to put it bed tonight, which this would be the final thing that would let us do it. So do you guys have any questions?
Any questions? Okay, thank you so much for being here and sharing that. Thank you. All right, I'll call for any public comment on this item. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. This is also a first hearing for this item. So does any council member desire to consider this item again at a later meeting? At the next meeting, I should say. Okay, if not, is there any discussion about this item? Councilor Whipple?
Yeah, so I just wanted to say welcome to my neighborhood. That's not too far from where I live. And I mean, the little old house that was there was just not worth anything. And this will be a huge improvement to it. And in our neighborhood, we have in the past done some little subdivision of lots so that we could have more single family homes on that. And this is consistent with that. And I'm just so happy that we'll be able to help you and your family on this. And I'm really sorry that you ran into that mess with the clouded title, and I'm glad that you were able to get that sorted out, and that what you want to do is still consistent with what the neighborhood wants for this and will still be an improvement for the property.
Okay, seeing no other further comment, then I will call for a vote on the implied motion. I will vote yes. I'm George Handley. Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor Hoban?
Yes.
That vote is 4 in favor. Do we need to wait for Councilor McKay to return, or can we just go ahead? Okay, so that's unanimous with Councilors McKay, Ellsworth, and Fillmore excused. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move to item number 7. This is an ordinance, an implied motion on an ordinance amending the general plan to adopt the Southwest Neighborhoods Plan. Brandon Larson, planner, will be our presenter.
Hi, thank you, council. Good to be here. This has been a plan that's been in the making for a while now, and glad to get this before you. So this is set. So we've got a general plan that sets general policies for the city, and the city has a number of neighborhoods, and that general plan can't dial into specific neighborhoods and specific areas of the city. And so this Southwest area kind of takes a really close look at 4 neighborhoods on the southwest side of the city, particularly Fort Utah, Provo Bay, Sunset, and Lakewood. So these 4, this plan looks a little more closely at those neighborhoods. We started this process, the current process, back in 2017, had a steering committee that was made up of residents and
and planning commissioners and others that help kind of steer the direction of this document. And that process resulted in a future land use map. And that was adopted, I believe in 2018. And we've been using that document for some time. It's been helpful in assessing land use applications in those 4 neighborhoods. We didn't, it took a little longer to get the general plan or the Southwest text prepared. And so we're bringing that to you tonight. So there's a number of documents. We've kind of talked through this in the work session, but what I just wanted to point out a couple of important things in this document. One of I feel like a number of these Southwest issues have kind of already been ironed out a bit before we even got here. Like we have the Southwest future land use map that's already been adopted. And then of course the West Side development policies. And so this section D, summary of existing goals and policies, is an area that's the area that will house those West Side development policies. And then reference a number of other associated policies that affect this area. The West Side, as we talked a little bit earlier in the meeting today, in the work session meeting, we had talked about those West Side development policies. And one of the important things in there is up at the top, this 3B talks about, or rather 3C, mix of housing types and trying to try to get a mix of houses and lot sizes and so forth. We went through the process of modifying or kind of clarifying some of the statements in the West Side development policy statements, and they're in this area here, that those charts call for a mix of lot sizes. And so anyway, wanted to point that out, that we've talked through these things, but this is an area, this is kind of the home for this West Side development policy or set of policies. It's currently in our current general plan, but as you are aware, we are working on a general plan that we hope to have before you very soon. That general plan won't include these West Side development, won't include the West Side development policy. So it's important we have a place for those in there. It's here. Another important thing that I want to highlight in this document is, I'm going to go first to the map and then back up. Yeah, this map's been adopted for a few years now. And it's been helpful, like I said, in evaluating applications in this area of the city. But what's good about this proposal before you is we've, in this future land use section or chapter of the plan, is it gives you descriptions of the land use designations on that map. For instance, you have an RA designation, an RES designation, and so forth. You can see the others on the screen there. But this map, or rather this plan, helps give some description on those areas. And I'd point out that, like for RES, this was kind of one of the more confusing parts of the map. This helps to clarify here that the density for the RES area, which is a big portion of the mapped area, is 3 units to the acre gross. So that's a really important part of the plan. And then another important part I would call your attention to, all of this is important, but there is, I just want to highlight a couple of points and let you guys ask questions. This area here, parks, trails, and open space. The document tells you that most of the parks and open space for the Southwest area have already been established. There's a number of parks on the west side, and there's a large park
that's in planning and permitting stage right in this area for a big regional sports park there. But this document also tells you of some other future things like development along Big Dry Creek, which kind of goes from like footprinters and south from there down into Utah Lake. You can see it right there. And so this document kind of talks about, or it talks about how to order development along that creek to make sure that it's an amenity. Houses are placed in such a way that creek becomes an amenity rather than it's something that's blocked off and not utilized. So that section, that Parks, Trails, and Open Space section identifies a few other parks and things that we're looking forward to, like the expansion of the Sunset View Park and the Gateway Park that will be next to very close to the the Provo River Delta project. So anyway, that's, and then of course this document ends with an implementation strategy, a set of implementation a set of processes that we would go through to ensure that we make sure that this plan's kind of put into action, and then an implementation schedule to order the activities and actions that should be taken, that should be put into action according to the plan. So with that, I'll turn it over to you and let you ask any questions that you have. So
Thank you. I have one question.
Yes.
Actually, I have two. One is about agricultural preservation.
Okay.
In the plan, it indicated conversations that have taken place with different property owners about anticipated timelines for when they might want to or plan to discontinue agricultural use. And I'm curious to know a couple of things. One is that updated, or is that somewhat dated news? And specifically, have those people been made aware of the possibility of conservation easements? I guess, and maybe we can't know some of this, but I'm just curious to know if somebody says, I'm planning to develop in 5 years, but they said that because they feel the pressure, but they haven't contemplated an easement. And I know Sean Miller has been, our agricultural commissioner has been talking to some property owners. We've had 3 properties put under easements. I just don't know if Sean's efforts are in harmony with what's here in this document, or we has staff been communicating with him about his conversations? And because I know he was, pretty active in pursuing those conversations with people.
I'm not aware of conversations with Sean Miller, at least recently. Some of that, I am not 100% sure, but Bill may know more than me on this one, but I believe that the data related to the agricultural lands and specifically, when it talks in there about how long farmers plan to continue to keep their land in agricultural production. I think those are somewhat, they're not recent. They weren't done this year. So I can tell you that.
If there is a change in that conversation for any reason, if the commissioner is having a conversation with a property owner and that becomes a potential area of preservation, what would be the mechanism to update this plan accordingly?
We certainly could, the council could certainly ask for us to reevaluate that. If staff becomes aware of it, we can propose an amendment. I think there's definitely avenues to get this document amended. And I think it's not uncommon for a document to be, adopted, and then you come back and maybe touch up a few things on it. So it wouldn't surprise me if a conversation needed to be had later about agricultural lands.
Maybe that's a question for staff, Brian or Justin. Is that something that needs to actually go through a process of reapproval of the whole document if there's just some minor adjustments that certain property owners have indicated otherwise, or we now know, because I'm not even sure if the 3 properties that are under easement are in this document.
Suppose legally, the question is, I mean, the planning commission has given you a recommendation and you are authorized to adopt or modify that recommendation. So there are changes, but you're not necessarily getting public feedback on that. So it's mostly just a question of whether you want more
Changing
feedback or
data inside the plan.
Yeah, I don't think that would require any change to this document, but as you're aware, Mr. Jones and I have been talking about agricultural protection areas within the city and what we would need to do to arrange for that to be able to be approved or to happen. So I think we would have to have that if that's what they want to do. If they're going to lock it up in with a tool like that, there's some local ordinances we would have to do. But as you know, we've been discussing doing that for another situation, another property owner.
Okay.
I can,
Well, yeah, go ahead.
I can clarify that none of the current easements are part of this southwest area map right here. They're
north.
They're north
Okay,
of this.
that's right. I knew that. Yeah, I mean, but it just occurs to me that if there are any developments, maybe I'll just ask that you follow up with Sean Miller just to get some sort of get his eyes on this to make sure that there's not any information that might be relevant. It doesn't necessarily change anything dramatically, but on the other hand, if we were sort of assuming that a certain area was planned for development and that owner has now indicated that they don't want to develop it, obviously then that changes the surrounding areas, changes the ratio, the gross density issue, and so.
Right. I mean, the map's been laid out, I think, since 2018. And so what you see here on the map
might be dated.
It might be a little dated.
All
But
right.
yeah, that
Thanks.
was adopted, I think, in 2018.
Sorry, I had one more question, and that's about just about the commercial nodes. I guess I just have this sort of vague anxiety that the commercial nodes won't get the best services to those nodes that are going to really help those neighborhoods not have to be driving to other sides of the town to get basic services. And I don't know how you control for that exactly in terms of we've got an idea of where we want them, but do we have enough language or enough persuasion or incentives to help? I know we have a priority on a grocery store, but beyond that, I don't know anything else. And I don't know if we've made a list of the desirable commercial services we would want to see on the west side, again, that would reduce car travel. That seems to be the primary objective. Is that something that we would want to develop down the road?
Yeah, I mean, the document itself, I mean, it, like you said, it does call for a grocery store. I think that's been well documented and called for in this city in general. But when it talks about these little, these neighborhood commercial areas, it's describing them as areas where there could be gas stations and then smaller neighborhood commercial like office space and retail. They have soft edges, and so they can be expandable to mix with the areas, but you don't get a lot of detail more than that in that document than other than like I said, with neighborhood commercial areas, it's calling just generally for that type of retail and office type of mix there.
Can you prioritize things like a dentist or things that would be, again, facilitating a shorter trip for people that I mean, if it's a business that's just got their business office there, that's great, but that doesn't necessarily solve the problem, right? We could end up with higher density around commercial nodes that are nothing more than a gas station and some business offices, and that doesn't really serve the purpose of those commercial nodes. So that's been kind of my open question about how that works.
Yeah, and that's it's my understanding that the document doesn't get into that kind of detail into specify other than really general desired uses. It doesn't get into it more than that. And as far as we do have a section, of course, on we have placed an important we've highlighted the desire to make this area walkable and to be accessible for alternative transportations and active transportation. That commercial section it does not really describe talk so much about alternative, the idea of those areas being accessible for walkers and pedestrians and bicyclists. I think it's kind of, I guess we've kind of siloed that issue. We've kind of put those issues kind of in transportation and not really meshed them so much with commercial. And that's anyway, I think that's kind of where we're at this point.
Okay. Well, if there's some way to develop that a little bit further, I don't know what that looks like, but in terms of like how it works to try to get the word out, or as it were, to sort of list desirable businesses we'd like to see there. I don't know. Maybe Keith and Bill have further ideas on that, but I would just ask the staff to look into that, see if there's some way we can make sure that it doesn't just end up being kind of haphazard and not really serviceable.
That makes plenty of sense to me, and I think we can really I think we can find some reasonable ways to address that. So,
Councilor Whipple.
Yeah, I've got some questions about how updated this map is as well. So I think this doesn't show the new middle school on it, does it? Does that just say existing park for where that will be? The footprinters?
Yeah, I think that new school is supposed to be right there. Is that right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it does not. This map again was adopted. This current effort wasn't to try to update the plan so much. It was to bring the text along with what was done in 2018 for the map. So that wasn't our intent here, was to update that map.
Yeah, the map is, and I understand that's supposed to be kind of bloopy and just high level, not super specific. The next question I had about the map is about this little yellow residential area in the upper left corner, the little U-shaped bloop up there.
This here?
Yep, that little guy.
Okay.
So I know that somebody's working on a plan to make that a little industrial park instead of residential.
Yeah, that's right.
My understanding is they'd have to change the west side. Is it the neighborhood plan? But is the interest to make this consistent with the other plan and have to change both of them for a development like that? I'm just trying to understand what needs to happen in what order.
I would say adopt this first. We do have a proposal that's out there that, from what I understand, hasn't come to you yet. That they would need to propose to adopt this. So that'd be an additional conversation that we'd have in the future. But let me back up. This was adopted in 2018. So this is on the books, and this is what the city felt was appropriate in 2018. And so at some point when Anderson Development comes in with that application, you'll need to consider whether or not to approve that amendment. And then if you do act to amend that, it would amend this document and the general plan. So they would need an associated with their rezone and associated general plan amendment, which would amend that document and the general plan. So.
And then the last question I had was about commercial opportunities near the regional sports park. So
Mhm.
right now we have that designated as kind of airport, industrial and commercial.
Right.
But we've talked broadly about, as this area develops, we will want to have, gas stations or restaurants or things like that. Would those be able to fit in that airport, industrial, commercial zoning, or do we need to have additional commercial zoning along Lakeview Parkway to accommodate that extra demand that we'll have when we have this giant sports park and lots of hungry families?
Right. So this airport commercial area through here, that I envision that probably becoming AI. The AI definitely can allows for food. That's in fact, I believe it even says in the document there. The anticipated development for AI includes corporate offices, hotels, warehouses, eating establishments. So I'm not 100% sure on gas stations. I know gas stations would be allowed in that area right there and right there, of course. But I know food establishments would certainly be allowed. If that's zoned AI over to the west, that purple area, that would be a eating establishment area.
Fantastic. I just know that these are concerns that people have, and we need to consider them as we're setting up this program. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? All right, let's see, where were we on this one? We have not had public comment on this, so let's open it up for public comment.
Becky Bogdan, Provo, Utah. I'm excited that this thing is finally coming before you. I like it. I've reviewed it. I'm glad that they looked at my suggestions for changes. As far as someone like the Stubbs, if they don't want to develop, I'm not too concerned about how that affects this plan. When we did have our public works meeting back in October, the Stubbs were there and they did talk to Dave Decker. They were concerned about the sewer lines coming through their property. And Dave was really good to explain to them, hey, we don't have to have utilities go through your property. They can follow the Lakeview Parkway and things will be okay if you want to continue to farm. I'm not concerned about that with this plan. I know some of the public may not understand it as well, but if they do ever change their mind in the future, we do need a plan of how this is going to affect that. Tim Crandall is a really good friend of my husband's. He worked with him for years and he owns Crandall Farms in Orem, right through 800 East, right? Some of the only farmlands left in Orem, right in the heart of Orem. And he has his under an easement that he actually did through Orem City. And it's amazing. He does not have one utility line through it. And it can be amazing either way, but we can still have those kinds of lands like we do in Orem and that are preserved for his orchards, right? And still have development around it, and it's okay. The only thing, and I'm going to say this for Beth, and I realize that housing prices are really, really high right now. But the one thing that she did fight really hard for was development standards for housing units. And I understand the only one we don't have those for are our single family residents. But the concern is the West Side has a bad connotation as it is. And we do deserve the best there. The concern is we don't just want just whatever junk put up there. We want good quality developments on the West Side. So anything we can do to help that would be very much appreciated. But I do support this document. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for further discussion. Does any council member desire to continue? Mr. Jones, can I ask a question? Because I can't remember having 4 council members at the dais before. To pass anything, we would need 3 votes.
No, under state law, and that
Or
would
we have to
normally be
have
the
4?
case under Robert's rules, but under state law, you must have 4 votes, even if there's only 4.
Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, we apologize. Counselor McKay had to leave, emergency. So we will, have discussion of this item. Discussion. Okay, then I'll call for a vote. Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
and I, George Hanley, will vote yes. So that is unanimous, 4 in favor, with Counselors McKay, Ellsworth, and Fillmore excused. So we'll now move on to our final item of the evening. Is an implied motion on an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 0.22 acres of property located at 1220 East 960 South from one-family residential and residential conservation to low-density residential. I will, and this looks like Aaron Ard. Welcome, Aaron. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Aaron Ardmore, city planner, will present this item.
Thank you. I understand that Dustin's name was on this originally. Keith has presented this in the past, but now it's my turn. So if we could pull up the slides, I'll try to be brief on this, as I believe you took public comment last time.
We did.
And I listened to that and watched that and read the emails that came in for this item. So just, I guess, quickly, can I do that? All right. Let me show you. So there's the property there, just west of Cinnamon Ridge along 960 South. Currently zoned R1, and the request is to turn it to LDR to be able to build a twin home. So there's a little closer. There's the parcel that they would be needing to rezone, and there's the concept of the twin home. So just briefly, the staff recommendation on this, staff recommended approval. There's a few reasons for that. Planning staff believed that it would be a good transition between the apartments to the west and the single family to the east. It is in itself still single family. It's just single family attached. So there's that to consider when looking at the neighborhood plan. And really the difference between a single family home and a twin home, in staff's opinion on this parcel, wasn't a substantial difference. The level of increased parking or traffic that would come with that additional unit wasn't really substantial enough for staff to be concerned. That being said, we would be fine with a single family home as well. If that's the way the council decides to go, to leave it R1 and hopefully someone builds a home on it. I think anything would be better than the vacant property that's been there for a while. Whether that's a twin home or single family home, whichever gets it done quicker, I think would be preferred. There isn't, staff's looked at the safety concerns. I think whatever those are going to be consistent, whether it's a single family home or a twin home. The road is plenty wide. There's ample parking. So those are some of the things that went through staff's mind, just to give you some background on the recommendation. But we are recommending approval of this zone to enable the property owner to develop this into a twin home development. But that's all I've prepared.
Okay. Councilor Shipley.
Quick question on this that we're looking at. Is that just a trail that goes through this?
So that trail, I believe, is part of the apartment complex open space, and it actually wraps down through here.
I'm talking about just above that.
It's
really faint. No, just
I'm sorry.
In this strip right here that is not developed, right below, next to that trail you were talking about. Is that a walking path that people have created, or is it a fence line? What's going on right there?
That's a great question. I don't know. Someone from the audience might know.
We can't hear her.
I'm sorry. I can
we
either
can,
have her
but
come
the
up or-
recording needs to hear you.
extensively because
Please state your name. So
This
that-
is Christy Charles.
Thank you.
So I live on the path that connects with it, and it was supposed to be the connection to the path. I don't know how to do this, but anyway, this path right here was supposed to be a path that went through here. And this is an easement that people just built their houses back to the end of it without acknowledging the easement. And so the path ended up having to be connected up here on the sidewalk. And so there's nothing back here except the apartment buildings, but it was supposed to be a city easement that wasn't acknowledged.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Aaron Groban? No.
So Aaron,
Yeah.
there's been a lot of comments about, parking and things like that. And I did drive out to this area today, and I think it could absorb a twin home as opposed to a single family from a parking standpoint. That is always something I'm trying to be cognizant of. And there are some areas where I've voted no on things because I think the parking would get a little overwhelming. But I think the thing that resonates most with me is a lot of times we see single family that don't have enough diversity, single family neighborhoods that don't have enough diversity in terms of like not enough twin homes or there aren't any apartments. And so we're trying to diversify in that direction. In this case, there's been some arguments made of, hey, there's hardly any single family left in this, single family developments that would be coming in this area. And we need to kind of protect that single family development. Does staff have any thoughts on that as far as like, does this area lack single family and needs more single family? I know we don't usually see that. Usually we're kind of looking in the other direction of like, we've got a lot of single family in certain neighborhoods and such. So does staff have any thoughts on that? As far as kind of protecting that zoning, so to speak?
It kind of depends how you look at it. If you look at this map, you look at all those streets kind of east of State Street. In my opinion, that's a lot of single family. I don't think there's a lack of single family in the area. Nor do I think one property going from a single family to a twin home is going to break that. That's my opinion. I know that there are different views out there. Some of those might have been converted over the years. I know there's some rentals out there that might have been converted there's accessory apartments out there. But as a land use, there's plenty of single family in Provost and Provost South.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, no other questions. Then we'll open this up for public comment. I just want to mention, I certainly want to invite anybody who wants to speak, but we did have public comment 2 weeks ago on this item. We've received a lot of emails. And so I'd like to try to keep public comment within 15 minutes if we can tonight. So if you can be brief, that would be great. Thank you. Please state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Steve Sobey. I'm a registered engineer on this project. Live in American Fork, was on the American Fork City Council and the Planning Commission. And I just wanted to remind you probably already know this, but a general reminder of about 12 facts concerning this project. Number one, the staff recommended it. You heard that. Number two, the Planning Commission already approved it. Number three, the proposed zone is supported by the Southeast Neighborhood Plan. Number four, the neighboring property to the west is in favor of this. Number five, no issues have been presented to the staff as of last week. Number six, the proposed use will provide a harmonious transition with the adjacent parcels, as stated by the staff report. Number seven, the proposed LDR zone will provide compatible residential use as infill. So we're meeting all the requirements. The rezoning will align with the future land use map. Staff brought this up. A twin home is one of the least intense uses in this zone. And twin homes are a great option to provide adequate housing, as stated by the staff, and meets the health, safety, and welfare of the public. This project will help implement the Southeast Neighborhood Plan. Number 12, the types of impact for a twin home would be compatible with that of a single family home. This will help improve the vacant lot that exists now. There are no timing and sequencing problems. So all that was in the staff report and the Planning Commission approved it. Several other facts that let me just bring up. There'll only be one more residence. There'll only be one more car during peak time. There'll only be one more student on the walkways. We will not change the walkways. We will not change the crosswalk. And actually will provide a more safe condition for sight distances, because those cars that are parked there now, you might see in the photos, they will not park in front of the driveway. So you'll have better sight distance.
Thank you. I think your time's up.
And my time's up.
Yep.
And I want to also let you know that we had a traffic report done that presents the facts and not the fiction and just public clamor.
Thank you.
So we need to hear from the traffic engineer.
Thank you. I think Diane was next, actually. Go ahead.
My name's Diane Christensen. I'm here with the public clamor. I live in this neighborhood. In fact, my home is directly across the street from the property that's in question. The recommendation that came from the Planning Commission last month should by right have been a negative recommendation, because after an hour of robust discussion, the vote ended in a 3-3 tie. At that point, the chair didn't know what to do, and she was advised by planning staff that the Planning Commission had to either continue the item or keep going with the discussion until somebody was ready to change their vote to achieve a majority vote. And so that's what they did. They kept discussing and discussing, and finally the chair changed her vote, and the result is the positive recommendation that came to you. But as it turns out, that staffer was wrong. Days later, and Mr. Smith, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the city legal department learned that a tie vote on the Planning Commission results in an automatic negative recommendation to the council, and that's what you should have in front of you. The error was compounded when the original vote was taken properly, ending in a 3-3 tie, and there was never a motion to take another vote or any kind of a motion on the table to properly vacate the first vote and change it. There was just generalized discussion, and then they just took another vote, which I don't think is proper procedure. So you have two flaws in the process, and that puts the outcome in question as to whether or not the Planning Commission would have recommended this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. My name is Josh Gibbons. I'm with Hales Engineering, a resident of Lehi, Utah. We were asked to complete a traffic study for the project. It was a simple trip generation study is what we call it, to see how much the project would generate as far as traffic goes. So what we did is we looked at, the comparison of the proposed twin home with comparing that to a single family home. And what we did is we used the Provo City rates that have been adopted in the Transportation Master Plan, which are actually, Provo City has shown that they generate more traffic per home than the national standard, basically. So we made sure to use the Provo City rates as we did this to see how much each scenario would generate. As was mentioned, the twin home we anticipate would generate one additional peak hour trip or vehicle on the road in that evening peak hour. The one single family home would generate one in that peak hour. This twin home would generate two, so it's adding one additional car to the road during the peak hour. It's a small increase compared to the alternative overall, and we don't see that having a large impact on the operations of traffic on the road. We did a quick count of traffic out there on 960 South as well. There's the day we counted on a weekday, there were about 86 cars in that evening peak hour already on the road going back and forth, east-west there. And so you'd be adding one car, or well, two cars to that 86 to get about 88 or, around that. So once again, we don't see a huge impact. And just so you know, we just completed this study. I don't know if staff has seen this, but it can certainly be distributed to them for review as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy Charles. I'm the co-chair of the Cottonwood Meadows neighborhood directly across the street from the lot. I'm representing many of my neighbors who ironically could not come tonight because there's a neighborhood event happening right now. And several others are out of town. So please refer to their emails and mine. I wanted to highlight one point besides the irregularities in the planning commission meeting that led to what we believe was an unfair process. Our neighborhood has nothing against developers or the building of multifamily units. This isn't a matter of a big bad developer swooping in. It is a matter of a neighborhood plan, one of which you just approved for Provo. In fact, since the neighborhood plan was passed in 2014, developers have built hundreds upon hundreds of low, medium, and high density units in our southeast area, and we haven't protested any of those. What we feel passionately about is that you honor the Southeast Neighborhoods Plan that was put together with much deliberation and compromise, especially on zoning, with strong language added to it for that reason. Here are the first priorities in that plan. Quote, 1, viable significant areas of one-family structures within the residential area should be protected for continued one-family use. 2, increase owner-occupied and establish one-family dwellings as the principal residence use, except in areas designated for higher density. It goes on to say this about our specific neighborhood, quote, the character of established single-family residential neighborhoods is being lost as pressures to convert these homes to multi-unit housing increases and their affordability for owner occupants decreases. Finally, the plan specifically mentions that our area's parking problems come, quote, in areas where existing occupancy exceeds that of anticipated original development. Again, the problems occur when we change the carefully thought out plan, one of which you just approved. The question is, do you mean to stand by your decisions in these plans? It sounds like it's one small lot and one transition, but this is precious to us. This is one of the only spots that's left in our area to develop, and we ask you to oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Kaufusi Malolelei. Hello, everyone. My name is Temba Lawson, and I live in Cinnamon Ridge. We were one of the first to buy in this development in 2006 and have enjoyed seeing this area of Southeast Provo grow and develop. As a real estate agent of 21 years, I'm here tonight to plead with you, our city council members, to please vote no to this zoning change. For many reasons. One is parking. Adding 2 residences to this one lot would substantially change the parking issue. Looking ahead, these could turn into rentals. And if there are 3 to 5 singles on each side, that would be a nightmare. Even though Provo City restricts rentals to 1 family or 3 unrelated singles, owners don't always follow that. And if they do, their tenants might not. In the Pioneer subdivision just south of Cinnamon Ridge, the streets are covered with parked cars for these reasons. This lot and our streets do not have room for 10 more cars. Another reason, safety. This lot is across the street from mailboxes, already causing cars to stop and park temporarily. It's also across from the walking path that our children use to get to and from Provost Elementary, with cars stopping to check mail, kids crossing the street, kids waiting for their bus, and kids walking on the sidewalk. Having 10 cars pulling in and out of those driveways would be a huge hazard. Please consider the safety of our residents and our children. Home values. I know for sure this would adversely affect our home values. We are law-abiding, tax-paying citizens, and changing the zoning of this lot would hurt us. Affordable housing. I definitely want affordable housing more accessible for our community, but I also want current homeowners to uphold their values too. We already have enough of a great mix with apartments right by us, We have townhomes south and across State Street from us, and we have condos up the hill. Changing the zoning for this one lot won't solve the problem of affordable housing in Provo. Again, I plead with you to please vote no to this zoning change. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Mike Lawson. So you just heard from my wife, so you know my background and investment in this area. I'm also here to ask you, our city council members, to please vote no to the zoning changes. I too am a real estate agent and want you all to know our respect for real estate developers and how they develop, they contribute to our community's real estate needs. What we hope to see built on this beautiful lot is a single family home that is similar to the existing homes nearby. A few doors east of this lot is a home that sold in May. It has 6 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and sits on a 1/4 acre. With a demand to live this close to BYU and the I-15, I mean, it's going to be no problem whatsoever in selling. And in fact, my wife and I have several clients and family members who would love to live in this area. Doing this would keep within the Southeast Neighborhood Plan by upholding the character of the established single-family residential neighborhoods. Section A in this plan is about the housing, the housing and states. No properties currently zoned as R1 are recommended for change in this plan. Current zoning regulations should be strictly enforced in the R1 zones to encourage clean, well-kept communities and regulate over-occupancy and parking issues that face the area. So please vote no.
Thank you. He gets a 40-second bonus.
Hello, my name is Kylie Pearson. I'm coming tonight to ask you to please vote no on this zoning change. And that is for several reasons. The first is that the Southeast Area Plan was agonizing in its development. It took many people, many months, and many meetings to arrive at a number of compromises. One compromise was that the neighbors accepted higher densities west of State Street in exchange for strong language in the plan to prohibit changing residential zones east of State Street. Yet here we are. When it comes to zoning, ignoring a crucial part of the planning one time, it makes it much easier to repeat that again and again until there is no planning, only development. Another item I'd like to mention is that I actually purchased a home in this area about a year ago, and I can assure you there is a lot of demand out there for a single family home. It was very difficult to find a home in this area that was in that criteria, and it was very competitive. I assure you that there is plenty of demand out there for that. Also, I'd like to make another plug for the safety issue of having the path across the street. I drive across this road every single day. And when it comes to, I'm not sure what it qualifies as peak time, but when it's time for children to be coming out of school and going to school, that path is very busy. There's many children that are going to and from that area. And with cars that are parking, that are lining the streets there, it's very difficult when kids dart out between cars. You have to be very cautious. And with the likelihood of these twin homes turning to rentals with a higher percentage of cars on the parking on the road, that's a real safety issue. I'm plead with you to vote no on this zoning change. I plan to be a longtime Provo resident, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can you? Okay, my name's Trevor Sharp. I stood up on the last public comment. I'm from Pleasant Grove, American Fork area. We're the ones who purchased the lot and are looking to develop it so that my son and his wife can live on one side and then potentially rent out the other side. So a couple of things I want to pass out to you here. We've heard some comments from public, and we tried to kind of make some analysis about that. If you look on the first sheet, it should say neighboring streets to 960 South. That's this one here. If you take a look on 900 South, 800 South, 420 South, and 1140 South, each one of those streets are lined with vehicles on the street. There's plenty of parking on there. My point is down below here is that 960 South is not any different than any other Provo City neighborhood streets. It's not any more traffic, not any more public parking issues at all. If you flip over to the next sheet, which starts off by saying street view of 960 South. I took pictures of these yesterday about 2:57, about the time I thought maybe kids would be coming through that neighborhood street. So if you looking north, that's that neighborhood path that they're talking about that children are going to be passing. And I don't see very many vehicles stacked up there. Looking east, looking west, there's very few cars that are stacked there. The only thing I see on the west is down there by the apartments for the multifamily units, where the units don't have a designated parking for their area. So they're parking on the street. So if you look at the south view, that's our subject lot. And there's two vehicles that are parked there. And what I think is really ironic is we've done some homework on those two vehicles. That box truck that's sitting there is actually one of the residents from Cinnamon Ridge, actually kitty corner to my lot. Yet they're coming here complaining about me building a townhome or twin home that's going to cause parking issues, but it's okay for them to park on the street. And my last comment is this, is that lot's been sitting there for 18 years. It's changed hands multiple times. No one's built a single family home, and we don't have any desire to park on the street. We have self-contained garages and parking structure on our lot to take care of our parking. We will not be parking on the street and causing any kind of public safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Randolyn Macedoni. I am a Provo resident. I've lived in Provo for 26 years, 13 years in apartments and townhouses and all manner of living situations, trying to get PhDs and fellowships and all that jazz. And then when we were finally able to not share a wall, this was a glorious day and we bought our house. And I am so glad that this box truck was brought up, because I think this is really kind of an example of the crux of what we're talking about here. Because when we build a house, when we have a builder or a decision made in planning phases, we can't foresee all of the parts and pieces. So this cul-de-sac has a narrowed entry. So the road actually kind of curves in as you pull in. The builder built this as a spec house. So their idea was get the house, sell it. They did not take into account anything other than a sedan fitting in said garage. So now that neighbor parks two cars on the street and a box truck across the street. But because he technically isn't running a business out of his home, there's nothing we as neighbors can do but call parking every single time that box truck lands on the cul-de-sac. So I think what we're trying to say is there is nothing wrong with developing this property. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with the builder, the owner, the son of the owner, and the people who would potentially rent. But there is a significant number of future concerns that we can alleviate by making sure this stays an R1 designation. Thank you.
Becky Bogdan, Provo resident. The one thing that we do tell our people a lot is this is what you can expect when we have an area plan or a neighborhood plan. And at least in my part of the city, that's really heavily what we put on so that they know what is going to happen. And when those things change, it really does cause a big disturbance in those that are counting on the council, the planning commission, development services to uphold. There's been a lot of time. I know personally people that have sat on the Southeast area plan, put into this, it's been vetted by the public. And so it would be really sad for that to change unless there was a really huge compelling reason to change that. Also, Southeast area, as we all know, is the area that has a lot of zoning concerns that aren't ever taken care of. And so I can see why this area is really sensitive to anything but single family housing. And personally, I tend to agree with them just for all those reasons that they've mentioned and that I've mentioned here is, there was a plan, it was vetted by the public, it was adopted by councils, and it's really hard unless there's a really big compelling reason to change that. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is John Heiner. I'll be the builder of the twin home on that site. And I'd just like to make one point. When we purchased the lot, we understood that it was on the master plan to be changed to this zone. We knew it would require a zone change, but we anticipated that that was a real high probability because it was on the master plan. So just want to make sure everybody is reminded of that fact that we're not asking for anything that isn't on the city's master plan. Thank you.
Right. I'm gonna call it good if that's okay. We'll bring it back to the council for discussion. We're grateful for the feedback we've received from the public on this, both here in person and mail. I will bring it back to the council for any discussion. Councilor Shipley.
Thank you. Just talking to Councilor Hoban a few minutes ago, I think some of the strongest opinions on the council about this particular project aren't here today. The one representing this area specifically, and then also two that have pretty strong opinions about how they would already vote for it. I guess that doesn't stop us from voting, and we could still vote on it today, but I do think that I don't know. I mean, I know there's no rule against us voting on it, but it is kind of strange for us not to have the discussion with them present. I don't know what to do about that. We've already continued this technically, but I guess in my mind, it might make more sense to involve their discussion. I think I know how they'd already vote. So but I don't know that that's helpful without the context, without their context, without what they would have to say about it. I will say that for myself on this particular issue, the difference between a single family home and a twin home, I guess isn't as stark, and I don't mean to offend anybody, any neighbors, but it's not as stark as maybe it's been represented today. I see this as an opportunity for two families to live here. I see this as an opportunity to get the same square footage. And if you have the same square footage, then, you have the potential for 3 teenagers in a 2,600 square foot house that have just as many cars as 2 different twin homes that are individually owned. So I don't see that difference as stark. I'm trying to get my mind around the safety issues and the parking issues and all the other things associated with this. But as far as just having 2 families versus 1 family and about the same square footage between those two, that issue isn't as clear for me. And I guess I'm trying to think through, like, is there something that I'm missing? Like, is there something below the surface here? Is there something about this particular project or this particular history of this property? That's why I asked about the path behind the property. Is this a path that all your kids use? And that's why this is so personal. I don't understand, I guess, what might be underneath the surface on this. It feels like there is something underneath the surface, and I can't flesh that out yet. So anyway, I'm a little bit conflicted on it because I don't see, just this huge difference between 2 families and 1 family if it's about the same square footage on this lot, and may even be the same amount of cars. I mean, it just doesn't, that part doesn't strike me as a reason not to do something like this. If how it was originally presented to us from planning was that this is not a significant stray from what the master plan was for this area. I seem to recall that. And so I guess I don't see us making this monumental shift, by taking this one property and doing something different. So that's my thought at this point, but I'm very conflicted with the fact that we've got 3 other counselors that I think would have strong opinions on this and don't have their feedback on this before we vote. So.
Are you going so far as to making a motion about a vote, or what do you?
Well, so we can't automatically continue on this one. This is the second time we've heard this, is my understanding. So we'd need a motion to actually continue it and have that would have to be a majority vote to continue it.
It would, but in this case, this is a little bit different than the rule that I mentioned a minute ago, since the motion to continue would not actually be a final approval of the ordinance, that would only require 3 votes to pass.
I guess at this point, I'd like to hear what the other counselors have to say. I mean, honestly, if you guys have a strong opinion about voting on it tonight, I would defer to that, but I feel conflicted about the fact that we're missing 3 counselors on this discussion.
Thank you. Go ahead, Counselor Whipple.
All right, I'm going to share how conflicted I've been about this whole thing. This is a fun one. In the last few days, I have gotten at least 44 or emails from 44 different people. And looking at their names, I checked, like they are actually neighbors and residents there. So we're not having somebody like use fake email accounts or anything. Many of these emails were duplicative. So whoever organized you people, it's amazing. And I want to use you as a force for good in the future. Like hats off to you. That's fantastic.
You want to solve intergenerational poverty for us?
Yeah. Super, super impressive. And of those, several of you spoke at the last meeting. Several of you are here tonight. What I thought was interesting was I don't know if the whole council, but I got at least one email from somebody who said, I'm actually in favor of this and don't tell my name out publicly because the HOA is against this, which is an interesting dynamic that's going on. And I'm not going to tell you that person's name. Yeah, it'll just be a mystery. It sits with me. But it's interesting where there is organization and this overwhelming mood and everything in the community that it's really hard for anyone to speak out against that, even in an anonymous way. For the arguments that were presented in the emails, I did not find most of them compelling. The one that I found the most compelling is that the developer knew what this was zoned when they bought it. So stick with that. The developer has responded that, I'm going off of the general plan that indicates that this should be changed. If you'll notice that new neighborhood plan that we adopted today has more squishy boundaries on what the zones are. Your plan has sharper boundaries on what the zones are. So, there's the developer's interest. Many of the emails said this is just the interest of one person. How could you take that over the interest of the entire neighborhood, which I will list as being at least 43 households around it. And I mean, that level of engagement is a strong argument, right? On the other hand, there is the larger general plan and the needs of the city as a whole. And so do we stop the needs of the city as a whole to do these infill, to pursue these developments because of a group of neighbors? You see what I mean? Like these clusters or these concentric circles of interest, and the interest of the city as a whole happen to coincide with the interest of the little individual person. One thing that I thought as I was reading all of these emails is that most of the people who were writing were able to purchase their homes several years ago. And they are strongly opposed to renters in the neighborhood. Not all of the email writers, but many of them actually said, we don't want renters here. That concerns me because I think of Provo as really welcoming, and I live in a neighborhood that's got homeowners and renters, and that vitality and that energy really adds a lot to my neighborhood. And I would hate that you wouldn't be welcoming those people. And it's not just some nebulous person. It's like this developer's son. This guy bought the property so he can build a house for his family. And you are rejecting this family because this is the way that the family can afford to make this work. Whereas if he bought the property in 2005, it'd be a whole different story. This property is probably worth more now vacant than houses were in 2005 when they were built. So this is why I feel conflicted about the whole mess. Generally, I'm in favor of doing this kind of infill. I see these townhomes, or not townhomes, sorry, a twin home as a great idea. And especially where it's this transition area between a higher density and the neighborhood where it's been vacant for so long, where looking at the map, you've got the residential, but this kind of cuts out. So normally I would be in favor of that. But there are like 43 of you who are against it. And I have to have significant respect for that voice and for that kind of organizing.
Want to make a comment or do you want me to? Okay, you're going to give it to me. Well, I think I'll just start out by saying I think I want to make a motion to continue this because I think I agree. I'd rather it just feels very strange to me that one vote against this or one vote against the other three, I should say, means that gives disproportionate power to that one vote. And I don't like that. So I think I would prefer to have as many of our fellow counselors with us tonight. And I apologize to the public about that. This is not normal in fact, this is the first time in 5 years that we've had 4 people, but been some extenuating circumstances that led to this. So that's my inclination tonight. I will say that I'm kind of leaning in opposition to the request only because I don't know. This has happened many times since I've been on the council where I feel the competing interests of a developer and a neighborhood. And there have been times when I have voted against the vast majority of a neighborhood over something because I felt like there were compelling reasons to say yes. In this case, there may be compelling reasons, but in all the other cases that I've been running through my mind, they were much bigger issues in terms of like how many units, how much of a development it was. So this is the only one that I can think of where it was a single lot that was at stake. So in terms of the difference between the one and the other, I think I agree with some of my other counselors in seeing that as not a significant difference. So in some ways that sort of leans in favor of the developer. In other cases, I would say it leans in favor of the neighborhood because doesn't seem to me to be there's a big gain in saying yes, as opposed to, I also don't think there's a big loss in saying yes. But I do have to respect the participation and the voice of the neighborhood unless I have compelling reasons not to. So that's kind of where I'm leaning at this point. But I would like to make a motion, although Mr. Hoban, if you want to make any further comments, that's fine. But I'd like to make a motion that we continue the item for 2 weeks from today when we anticipate.
That at the beginning of this,
I thought
just
Dave
kidding.
Shipley was going to do
I'm
it,
just
but-
kidding. I think it was good to hear public comments.
I thought we needed to deliberate a little bit publicly. But if you wanted to make any further comments, you sure? Okay. All right. We'll look forward to that. So any discussion of the motion? All right, I'll call for a vote on the motion. Mr. Hoban?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Counselor Whipple?
Yes.
Counselor Shipley?
Yes.
Okay, so that's unanimous. This item will be continued apologize, and we thank you, and we'll look forward to talking in 2 more. I don't want to shortchange other people who haven't commented, but we're probably not going to have a big, long public comment period about it in 2 weeks because that'll be the 3rd one, which is more per acre than we've ever had in the city. So, so I think we'll cut right to the chase next time. So,
And I do want to say, we've read all of the emails that you've sent us. We haven't responded to them because if we did, it'd probably have to be a form response at this point in time. But I want you to know, we have read all of them. And the whole council's been thinking about this quite a bit.
so if there is no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent.